Well, Trump took to Truth Social on Monday and endorsed Mike Johnson for Speaker of the House. He said the American people need immediate relief from all the destructive policies of the last administration. Speaker Mike Johnson is a good, hardworking, religious man. He will do the right thing, and he will continue to win. Mike has my total and complete endorsement, MAGA.
Not everyone is supportive. Indiana Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz told Fox News' Will Cain on Monday morning that there were others looking to take Johnson's spot. Here she is.
Well, listen, I think there are a lot of other people are interested, but I think they don't want at this point to go for Speaker Johnson, and I think, Speaker Johnson needs to have a serious conversation, and I hope he will be able to have that conversation, including with President Trump, and convince him, because there are a few things also he didn't deliver for President Trump, too, what he promised just recently.
So I think that's notable if you're telling us you know of other individuals in Congress who would want to put themselves up for Speaker?
Yes, they are, of course. There's a lot of people probably, and I think that's a debate we have, and I hope we have it before January 6th.
Quite a few Republicans blasted Johnson for negotiating a 1,000-page bill with Democrats earlier this month. President-elect Trump and Elon Musk ultimately spearheaded an effort to push back on that bill.
So the endorsement of Trump for Speaker Johnson is very consequential, a good thing for him, because we are hearing a lot of criticisms of him from Republicans. Now, I will say the endorsement might not be enough. Kevin McCarthy famously did enjoy the backing of Donald Trump to a considerable degree, but when push came to shove, Trump was either not involved enough in it on McCarthy's behalf for him to keep the gavel, or did not persuade enough House Republican members that they should keep him. We are seeing a cycle that has now repeated itself a couple times with the Republican speaker stuff from Boehner, Ryan, McCarthy, and now Johnson, where you have a speaker who ends up making compromises with Democrats for some mutual funding priorities, like, for instance, what keep happening with Johnson and McCarthy is Ukraine, even though many in the the more MAGA-leaning members don't want to spend money on this. So then they rebel. The speaker gets ousted. A new speaker comes in who promises things to the more hardline MAGA people, and then is unable to deliver on those promises because they have to make compromises with Democrats, and we end up in the same position. I think the best argument Mike Johnson has going for him right now is saying, well, let's just delay making the serious spending-related decisions until Trump is actually in office, and we have the congressional majority we're actually going to be working with. So we're going to punt that football one more time, and if it's really the last time, maybe that will keep the more MAGA Republicans at bay. Of course, they've heard this promise before and been betrayed every single time, so I don't blame at all the Thomas Masseys of the world for being skeptical and looking to see if there's someone else who wants the gavel. Of course, they could find themselves in the exact same circumstances.
So first things first, being the Speaker of a Republican Party in the House with a narrow majority is just a terrible job.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're trying all the time to placate both a relatively small number of Republicans who might represent Democratic-leaning or at least competitive districts, and at the same time placate the most hardline fiscal conservatives, who some are just sort of MAGA people, others I think certainly are pro-Trump, but have real genuine concerns. You mentioned Thomas Massey. I would add Chip Roy to that list of somebody who has an actual principled objection to lots of these government spending bills and all the rest. One of the problems that Republican speakers, including the ones you have listed, run into is there are limits to what is politically possible. For example, when it comes to something like the debt ceiling, it is broadly agreed that a US default would be catastrophic for the American economy and for the world economy. That means you really can't let that happen, otherwise the blame that is going to accrue to you from the public is going to be massive. You can't just accomplish everything that the Chip Roys or the Thomas Masseys of the world want unless you had a much bigger majority. Therefore, it's just a fundamentally difficult job. All of that being said, it is obviously to Mike Johnson's benefit that he now has Trump's backing. It would have been very, very perilous for him had that backing been withheld. I'm not sure who Victoria Spartz is thinking wants the job, but if someone was perceived to be the Trump candidate, other than Johnson, you wouldn't fancy Johnson's chances.
That would be fatal for him, as you point out. Again, I'm hearing rumblings about Jim Jordan, although Jim Jordan couldn't really put it together after McCarthy's speakership fell apart, so I'm a little skeptical. I've heard the name Byron Donalds floated more than once. Yes, you're right that there's not an obvious MAGA behind one other candidate who could potentially get the job, and that's working to Mike Johnson's advantage. We say it is a tough job. It's also like, I don't have all that much sympathy for him. He can just do it for a short amount of time and then go off and become some very wealthy lobbyist. Like, it will be to his personal benefit to have been the speaker.
It's not working down the salt mines. Like, I'm not saying that.
Right, with all those 11 and 12-year-olds.
Exactly. It's not been a child's chimney sweep, probably. That's the main point. But in saying all of that, I mean, it's just very difficult to corral a Republican conference that still has people who do need to be mindful of the centre ground and, the Chip Roys and Thomas Masseys of the world.
Sure, we'll have to see. Well, he will certainly be happy to have gotten that endorsement. Trump has backed Johnson quite a bit. I think, but if I'm trying to predict where Trump is thinking, I think Trump's thinking is he likes Johnson, he'll back Johnson, but he will also work with whoever if they decide ultimately to oust Mike Johnson, he will find a way to work with the kind of person who's going to get for it. It's not going to be there's no anti-Trump person left in the Republican Party. It's not going to be a stick-it-to-Trump person.
No, it's not going to be, Mitt Romney is not going to be made speaker from outside the House.
I saw Ezra Klein, I just saw a tweet from him observing this, and I think there's something to this. Some people had predicted a more, that in the Trump second administration there would be less internal dissent because Trump has banished all dissent against him from the Republican Party. That's true, but now the dissent is more interesting. So the first time around, the dissent in the Trump administration, the infighting, the disagreement, it was between ardent Trump loyalists and people who were not ardently loyal to Trump, but were seeing how much they could survive in the party. They're all gone. That's done with. Now the infighting is actually, I think it's more ideological than it was the first time around. Like, we're seeing the argument over the visas. We're seeing debates between the more tech libertarian leaning and fiscal restraint people. Debates between a more nationalist, national conservative sort of people who want more labor stuff, less immigration, who maybe don't want to have some of these showdowns on fiscal issues. They're having all, and then there's people who are amalgamation of all that, RFK Jr. type people, dissenting voices on foreign policy. Marco Rubio is very different from Tulsi Gabbard, even though they're getting along for now. The arguments are going to be ideological in the second Trump administration, even in Congress, more so than over do you like and love Trump personally. That bar's clear. Everybody's got to clear that bar or you're just not in the game anymore. Right. But having cleared that bar, now there are going to be debates about policy.
Yeah, and I think that's great. No, absolutely. And I think that the fact that there are really substantive differences, like we were talking about with the visa issue, like those are two fundamentally different worldviews, and that being contained within one party is genuinely interesting.
Do you think Democrats are going to learn any lessons from that?
I think probably not. Maybe in a little while, but not for the moment.
Love the honesty. More to come on Rising still today. Please stay with us.